«Почти дома».
Добрый вечер, господа, добрый вечер. Наша программа продолжается. Это шоу «Почти дома». И у нас сегодня в студии очень важный в эти дни человек Джо Сабан, кандидат в ассамблею штата Нью-Йорк от 45-го избирательного округа. Беседу с нашим гостем проведет владелица нашей станции Анна Пекерман. Аня, добрый вечер. Добрый вечер. Hi, Joey.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Hi, Joe. Hi, Andre. And hi to all our listeners. Всем здравствуйте. Сегодня у нас в гостях Джо Сабан, который сейчас баллотируется в ассамблею штата Нью-Йорк от 45-го избирательного округа. Это конкретно русскоязычный округ. Здесь русский голос имеет огромное значение, и поэтому мы хотим поговорить с Джо, узнать, кто он такой, зачем ему это все надо, и что нам будет от того, что если вдруг мы решим за него голосовать. Вот с этими вопросами мы сейчас обратимся к Джо. И, Андрюш, ты можешь тоже, пожалуйста, подключаться в любой момент. Это радио нашей общины, и ты как раз живешь в этом округе, поэтому тебе особенно не безразлично, что в нем будет происходить. Joe, sorry, I had to do introduction in Russian.
All good, all good.
But it is a great pleasure for us to have you on the radio. Of course, we're very, very curious because you're running in a predominantly Russian district, and where a Russian voice does make a difference, a huge difference in the elections. You're running on the Democratic Party line, which is not very popular these days, obviously, especially amongst the Russian-speaking community. So you do have to be incredibly convincing of why you're doing what you're doing, what people are going to have to gain from voting for you, and why is this a good idea for the community. And of course, honestly, you're young, very presentable man with a young family. And the first question, of course, that I would ask is, why do you need this? Why would you go do this at this stage of the game? It's not a secret that politics is a very, very dirty game. The more time passes by, the more we see that it's unfortunately is a field that's going to take a lot of hard knocks, and you do have a young family, beautiful children and wife, and you're Jewish, so family obviously has to mean a lot to you.
The most important thing.
There you go.
The most important thing.
So the question is, why you? Why now? What do you want to gain out of this or bring to the table?
Right. So first off, thank you for having me. The pleasure is mine. It is great to be here, and I want to wish everybody listening, first of all, good afternoon, and for those celebrating a happy holiday, Chag Sameach. So I remember, first of all, I always loved politics ever since I was in high school. At 14, 15 years old, I fell in love with civic engagement, public service, and really being involved on a political level. I remember hearing a lot of the speeches that elected officials, that candidates would give. And in these speeches, at one point or another, these candidates, these elected officials would always talk about children. Right? And they would say, oh, we have to do better for the children. And I remember as a younger person at 15, 16, 17, 18 years old, I would always hear these things. And I would think to myself, I would say, look at this cliche. Look at how they're talking about children and grandchildren. And this is nonsense. But as I got older, and then when I had kids of my own, I realized that it's really not a cliche at all. I realized that you would actually do anything and everything that you could possibly do to make this place better for them, to give them more than you had. And that's why I decided to run, because our district is underserved, because too many people are left behind, because there's a lot of families in the district that can't afford childcare and they have nowhere to put their kids, because our institutions aren't well served, and because we, in the last 2 years, have received less funding and less institutional support than the prior 20. And so when I saw that, and as my kids moved from infants, my son is now 2.5. He's going to actually be 3 next month. My daughter is now 9 months. I realized somebody has to jump in. And my passion for public service, my passion for politics took the better of me, if we can say that. And I jumped in.
Okay, how do you assess that the district is underserved?
So a few ways. The first is, I would say, funding, institutional support. The institutions, specifically the social service institutions in the district, have received less funding in the last 2 years than the prior 20. These are institutions that provide some of the most important and necessary tools for communities, for families in the district to live their everyday lives. And we're talking about things like, Bikur Cholim, a pantry, food for the needy. We're talking about a cancer center. We're talking about a special children's center. We're talking about organizations that provide for families who cannot provide for themselves for whatever reason, whether they're sick, whether they're unable, whether they have small kids, whether they can't deal with childcare. These social service organizations are a lifeline for so many people in our community. And they're being underserved now. They're being ignored. And we have to say no more. We have to say it's time for us to step up.
Okay, so we need to be a little bit more clear. When you say underserved, do you have any kind of numbers that you're working with?
So general rough numbers. In prior years, before the last 2 years, this district in whole has received approximately $5 million in institutional support, discretionary funding, etc., to organizations that directly help the community every day.
This was when we still had Assemblyman Steven Simberwitz.
Correct, when Steven Simberwitz was in office.
Yes, he was in the office for what, over 20 years?
Over 20 years. Yeah. And before him, Lena Simberwitz, his wife,
right,
was in office, and she was great too. And he really served the community. He made sure that every institution, that every place that needed funding got it, and that people were not left behind. In the last 2 years, since my opponent has taken office, we've received in the hundreds of thousands, and in the low hundreds of thousands. We're talking about $200,000 or $300,000. So you go from $5 million to $200,000 or so, and institutions will be left behind, and we cannot afford that.
Then I have a question: how do they function altogether in the last 2 years if they're that much underfunded?
Well, I'll give you an example. Right, one of the main issues that matters to Jewish communities in the district, for example, is the rising cost of education. The cost of education has gone up by the highest percent amount this past year than it's ever gone up in history. And it goes back to your question. Well, how come we see these things? Well, these institutions that usually have support from government, support from the state assembly, they now have to go to individual donors. And they have to say, we usually received money from our assemblymen, but now we're not getting anything. So we need you to fill in the blanks because we have to still provide these needed resources for the community. So these donors provide funding and try to fill in the gaps and the blanks as best as they possibly could. What that does is they can no longer give to other institutions like some of the Jewish schools in the district. What that does is it raises the cost of tuition. So the average person is affected by rising tuition costs because our current assembly person has not provided resources to basic important social service organizations in the district that depend on these resources and this funding in order to provide the needed help for so many people, so many families across our district. By the way, it expands from seniors all the way to the children. It's vast. All these organizations provide a vast amount of resources and support to people in need. And now they're being left behind.
I'm going to ask an unpopular question. Okay, does this have to do with the fact that Steven Simberwitz represented the Democratic Party and the Democratic Party in New York? Fortunately, unfortunately, that's not for us to judge, is the one that can bring in the budgets into the community. Do you think that is the problem? That now we have a Republican representing the district, so we're that much underfunded? Or do you think there's a different reason for it?
So, Anna, I want to answer that question in two parts. The first part, the first thing that I want to say is even Republicans in the state assembly have shown up and fought for their constituents. My opponent has not. I think that we have to underline that important fact. There are Republicans, and even if they may get less, because in Albany, in the state assembly, there is a super majority of Democrats. We know that. But that doesn't mean that so many Republican elected officials have gotten up and have fought for whatever they could possibly get. They've shown up every time. They've done anything and everything that they could to at least show their communities that they are there for them and that they're going to fight for them. We haven't seen that from my opponent. He's been missing. He's been absent. He's been ignoring communities in the district. I'm a Sephardic Jew. I'm from the Sephardic community. And my opponent hasn't stepped foot in one synagogue since he got elected. He hasn't stepped foot in one institution since he got elected. These are institutions that Simberwitz would visit on a regular basis. You are the sitting assembly person. You are the sitting elected official. How dare you not show up to represent your community? So Republicans, Democrats, we can put titles on it, but at the end of the day, whether you are a Republican, whether you are a Democrat, if you believe in your community and fighting for your community's interests, labels will not deter you. You will do whatever you need to do to fight for the interests that matter to your community. That's answer number one. Answer number two is about the Republican and the Democrats, right? Yes, we live in a very polarizing environment, but we have to understand that in New York State, in order to get things done, the Democrats have a super majority, which means the Republicans are really not able to do much. In order to even bring a bill to the floor of the assembly, you need 75 votes. The Republicans have under 50 members in their conference. So even if the Republicans had the best idea in the world, the only way for it to even reach the floor of the assembly would be for the Republican to take their name off of it and give it to a Democrat to run with. So we have to recognize that is the way that politics work in New York, and for us to not be underserved and for us to not be left behind, we have an incentive, and we need to incentivize voting for moderate conservative Democrats. Now, that brings me to another important point. A lot of people say Democrats are associated with the left, the socialists, etc. We have to show that there is such thing as a moderate conservative Democrat who can actually bring results to the community, who can actually effectuate change, who can actually get things done. Republican, Democrat on the national level is a whole different conversation than Republican versus Democrat in the local level. And what I tell so many of the people who ask me the same question you asked me throughout this campaign, I ask them a simple question. You elected, the community elected, the district elected a Republican 2 years ago. Do you feel more safe now than you did 2 years ago? And Anna, the answer is always no. Do you feel better off today than you did 2 years ago? Anna, the answer is always no. So we then have to look at the candidates and realize that it really is not about party. The guy I'm running against says he's a Republican. He gave money to Bernie Sanders 6 times. He voted against a program that would support New York State small businesses. And after October 7th, a day that saw the worst atrocity for Jews after the Holocaust, when hundreds of American elected officials from around the country were going to Israel to stand in solidarity with the Israeli people and shoulder to shoulder with the Israeli government, my opponent went to China on a trip organized by the Chinese Communist Party. So you really want to tell me that this is about Republicans versus Democrats? We need people to look at the candidates. Look at our track record. Look at the people that we are. Look at what we can deliver. Look at what we can bring back. And vote for the person that you believe in your heart of hearts will fight for you every day like he fights for his own family.
Well, I got to tell you, JFK is right now a very, very good example of unity amongst parties.
Yeah.
So if we can have more of that, that would be such a welcoming factor into all of our lives.
Yes, yes,
I mean,
yes.
the division, I think this country had enough of this division,
Yes.
and communities and everything. We have to come together and we have to really go for the common cause. Now, you said that you need to fight for your district. Can you elaborate on what this fight means? Like, what would you do? I mean, we're not talking about, put your gloves on and go at it, right? So, what do you mean by fighting?
So there's a few issues that really matter to the district and matter to the community. And at the top of the issue, or the top of the issues, is the current unfortunate rising tide of anti-Semitism, and what we see on college campuses across the country, but specifically in New York. It is one thing for somebody to say that they are pro-Israel. It is one thing for somebody to say that they will fight against anti-Semitism. It is an entirely different thing for them to actually do it. So what we have to do is we have to demand from our elected officials no more baseless lip service. We demand results and we demand action. So when people like my opponent say, well, I'm pro-Israel, and they go and they wave a flag at a rally, is that enough? You're the elected official. That should never be enough. If somebody says that they're pro-Israel, like my opponent does, for example, and they go and they put together a protest or a rally or hold up an Israeli flag, does that mean that that's enough? Of course it's not enough. Why have elected officials, and this goes hand in hand with my platform to fight anti-Semitism, how come he specifically didn't introduce legislation after October 7th to make sure that New York State increases their investment in Israel? As an elected official, you have that ability. How come he didn't introduce legislation after October 7th to provide that the New York State Police should give or provide assistance to either the IDF or the Israeli police in a time where they so desperately needed it? Why did he not introduce legislation to ban masks at public protest? Why did he not introduce legislation to ban encampments on campus grounds? Why did he not introduce legislation that would prevent any student arrested at a protest from receiving scholarships or financial aid from the New York State Assembly or from New York State or from New York City? All of these things that are part of my platform, by the way, these are things that I want to do once I get elected, is introduce legislation to fight back. We cannot afford to fight defense anymore. We need to play offense. We need to be in the game, in the arena, playing the game. And we have to be able to have somebody who is ready and is willing to fight for the interests that matter to us. It is enough of us having baseless lip service. Saying that you support the Jewish community is not enough anymore. Not after October 7th, not now, and it should never have been before. We need to demand that our elected officials put their words into effective action. That's what I will do. And it is in complete contrast to what my opponent has done.
Joe, I think it's a high time we have named your opponent, because he is extremely famous in our community. He's been around for a long time. His name is very known in this community. He's been in the entertainment industry for close to 20-something years. So, what is his name again?
Michael Novachov.
Okay, so you're running against Michael Novachov.
Correct.
Who is very well known. I don't know if he's popular, but he's definitely very well.
I don't think he's so popular.
Well, we'll leave it up to the people, right?
That's right.
But he's definitely very well known in our community for many, many years. And you're new. So what is your plan to win over the community? We understand that your district goes beyond our community. Of
course.
But our community does have a pretty major voice in this district, in the 45th Assembly District. And what is your plan to upseat him in this community, to get the vote from this community?
Right. Well, what I say is, let's call a spade a spade. If he was able to deliver for this community, we would have seen it, and we don't. And I've been around for the last 8-9 months, knocking on doors, talking to voters, Russian-speaking in particular, and the Russian-speaking community is one of the most important communities to me, and that's why we've put a tremendous emphasis on making sure that we get the vote out in the Russian-speaking community, because we want people to know. We want people to make an educated decision. Look, I go around, and the way that I believe in campaigning is I want to sit around your kitchen table and talk about the issues that matter to you. And then I will tell you what my policy platforms are and how I will fight for you in the New York State Assembly. And then I will pray that I will be able to have the confidence of your vote. And if I don't, I will still represent you, and I will still fight for you, and I will still do my best to make sure that you are well served. And that's what we haven't seen from my opponent.
Two-part question. First of all, why is this community one of the most important communities for you, besides the numbers that this community has? Obviously, we don't beat around the bush on this radio.
Of course.
And the second one, you said you've been getting acquainted with the Russian-speaking community for the last 8-9 months. Can you tell me what you see the important issues that this community needs addressed? Like, what do you know about this community?
Of course. So the first to answer your first question, I would say tradition. And the reason why is because there's so many similarities between the Russian-speaking community and the Sephardic community. So when initially, I'll say this openly, initially when I first started knocking on doors in the Russian-speaking community, I felt like I was not home. I felt like I was somewhere else. I felt like this was the other side, so to speak. Very quickly that changed. People welcoming you into their homes, people making you feel like you're at home, like you're part of the community. I felt like I was at home. genuinely. And that sense, it's funny because I kept going back to the same places over and over again because I felt really good about it. And these folks are incredible folks. So why I feel so, why I'm putting an emphasis on it is because the issues that matter to the Russian-speaking community are the issues that matter to my community and the issues that matter across the district. And I feel home when I speak to Russian-speaking voters because we connect. We connect on the issues and we connect also on a traditional level. And I think that that's important. And then the second part, what was the second question again? I'm sorry.
In the 8-9 months that you've been getting acquainted with our community, what have you found out about
anti-Semitism? Okay. Everyone's concerned about anti-Semitism. A lot of people are concerned about education as well. And of course, the general increase of crime and the bail reform issues, which we have to tackle in the assembly. And again, the message to the Russian-speaking candidate, look, I know I'm running against a Russian-speaking candidate. I'm not privy to that. I get it. But the question is simple. In the 2 years that he's been in office, do you feel like you're better off? Do you feel like you're safer? Do you feel like there's less crime? Do we have less homeless shelters or migrant shelters in our district than we did 2 years ago? Do you feel like there's somebody out there that you see fighting for you every single day? And the overwhelming majority of people that I speak to say no.
Well, Andre, you're in the district. You have a voice.
The only one thing I want to ask you, we are talking for about 30 minutes already. You're speaking about Jewish community.
Yes.
You're speaking about Russian-speaking community.
Right.
You never mentioned that Russian-speaking community is not only Jews.
Of course.
There are Russians, Slavic Russians, Ukrainians, Slavic Ukrainians, Pakistanians, and so on. I understand that you will fight only for Jews. Is it?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
But you said nothing about it.
We're talking about the main issues that we're hearing on the ground. And that's the difference. We're hearing about a bunch of different issues. We can list them. There's a dozen of them probably. As it relates to all the other issues that people care about, of course, there's education. I met with a Russian-speaking person, I don't know her background, who runs a daycare in the district. And it's a daycare for underprivileged people. And I had a conversation with her. And we looked at the numbers. And I said, how many people do you take in? And she gave me the numbers. And how many people do you turn away? And she says approximately 75% of the people in this district are turned away. So where do they go? Where do they go? Well, they have nowhere else to go because there's no other institution like mine. So you want to tell me that 75% of folks in this district, Russian-speaking, by the way, because it's a Russian-speaking institution, 80% of the folks in this district, moms and dads, have nowhere else to put their kids. So how could they go to work? How can they come out of poverty? How can they fight against? Where is our elected official? Why is there no funding for institutions like that? Why is there no funding for social service organizations? You talk about so many people, so many seniors in our district that are underserved. So many seniors in our district, Russian-speaking seniors, whatever their background is, whether they're Jewish or not, is completely irrelevant. How many of those people are underserved and don't receive the resources that they need? And don't receive, I'm sorry, I have to say this story. But there was one individual, Russian-speaking, who used to get help from Steven Simberwitz for many years. I guess she's immobile. And she cannot get, she receives help from a food pantry, and she cannot go get the box on the holidays. So Steven Simberwitz, or his office, would always go and put the box somehow in an Uber or taxi or whatever it is, and they would deliver it to her. So my opponent gets elected. Michael Novachov gets elected. And she reaches out and she tells him, and she's immobile and she can't get there and she can't do it. I need your help to get this for me for the holiday. I need this. These are people, she needs this stuff. And you know what the answer she got from his office was? I'm sorry, we're not an Uber service. If that doesn't speak to the kind of elected official that we have in office now, I don't know what does. This is not about what backgrounds we have, where we come from. It has nothing to do with it. We are all one South Brooklyn community. The issues that we care about might be different. For the Jewish community, it might be anti-Semitism. Guess what? For the Chinese community, it's anti-Asian hate. And for folks across the district, it's the fact that they can't feel safe on our streets and criminals feel safer than regular law-abiding citizens. But the issues resonate amongst the people. Everybody cares about education. Everyone wants to give their kids a better life. Everyone cares about the quality of life issues. Everyone cares about the streets staying clean and making sure that we have the ability to prosper. Everybody cares about being able to succeed. Everyone cares about the idea of the American dream. Where has that gone? Where has that gone? It's lost in thin air. So why can't we expect from our elected officials to do better for us? Why can't we expect from our elected officials to stand for the issues that matter to us, to fight for the things that matter to us? Waving a flag, holding a rally, speaking at a protest. I can do that as a private citizen, and you guys could too. But an elected official has a platform that they need to use to fight for the community, and we don't see it. That's why we're underserved, and it's happening across the district.
I think we got our questions answered. Only one more.
Yeah.
You're obviously sitting here because you have full support of your wife.
Oh, yeah.
Otherwise, that would not happen. We know how Jewish families work. Bringing back Andre, so sorry, to the Jewish topic. She is fully behind you.
Oh, 100%. She's the greatest. She is not only fully behind me. That's actually probably her calling me right now. But because my phone's on Do Not Disturb, and the only person that gets through is her. So that's probably her. But
okay.
She's been incredibly supportive. She's been unbelievable. Look, it's not easy. As a father with two kids, as a husband, you want to spend Father's Day with your family. You don't want to spend Father's Day going through petitions. But there is a sacrifice here. And the sacrifice is to fight for the issues that matter to the community because we have to, because we don't have a choice, that we have to make sure that our community is well served. Every single person who's listening to this needs to know, if there's nothing else you need to know this. I'm a husband and I'm a father of two, and I will fight for you like I fight for my family. And I always tell people, don't let the candidate vouch for themselves. Don't let the candidate speak to the person that they are. Let other people vouch for that candidate. Look at the family. Look at the whether it's the wife or the husband. Look at the other people in the community and ask them. If a candidate, it's one thing for the candidate to come out and say, support me because I'm this and that. It's a whole other thing for people in the community to say, we believe in this person because we genuinely trust that they will fight every single day for the issues that matter to us. We, as a community in South Brooklyn, wherever we come from and whatever our backgrounds are, we can no longer afford to sit on the sidelines. We have to be in the arena, and we have to be playing the game. And I'm going to play that game. And I'm going to be there fighting for our district every single day, bringing the resources back and making sure that we are well served and that nobody in our district, from the young children to the seniors, will ever be left behind.
Okay, you heard it here on Radio USA. Joe Saban, Assembly candidate for the 45th District in Brooklyn. You heard whatever you needed to hear today, so of course everybody needs to make up their mind based on what they hear, based on what they research, and elections are soon. Definitely need to get out and vote on November 5th. That is the important part. Make a good decision.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for taking your part in our show, which is ПОЧТИ ДОМА show, the night show of Radio USA. Thank you again.
Thank you again for having me.
Joe.
Thank you.